Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's a comforting precision to it. Like you fall off your bike, you break your arm. You go to the hospital and the doctor puts up an x-ray.
Right, they just point to it.
Exactly. They point to that jagged white line on the glowing screen and say, there it is. That's why it hurts. It's totally visible. It's undeniable.
Because it's a localized problem, With a highly localized mechanical solution, you just put a cast on it, keep it immobile, and wait 6 weeks.
But then you step into the landscape of romantic breakups and emotional trauma, and suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless.
Completely.
You walk around feeling like you are literally physically dying. Like you can't breathe, your chest aches, your stomach is in knots. But on the outside, to your coworkers or, I don't know, the barista at the coffee shop, you look perfectly fine.
Yeah, it is the ultimate invisible injury. We are so conditioned to want our pain to be categorized, right? Validated by something we can actually see. But heartbreak. Heartbreak is a massive, violent storm tearing through the invisible, microscopic neurochemical pathways of your brain.
Wow.
And because we can't see it, we often just assume we're going crazy.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking you into the intense, highly unpredictable, and honestly sometimes completely maddening psychology and neurobiology of breakups.
It really is maddening.
It is. Specifically, we're looking at the hard science behind the famous no-contact rule.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to answer the questions that keep you up at 3 a.m. Like, why does this hurt so much? Why are you acting so wildly out of character? And how does cutting contact act as a literal biological reset button?
And we are going to look at this from both sides of the coin, right? The person who was dumped and the person who walked away.
Yeah, we've got a great stack of sources today. We'll be weaving in data from a clinical fMRI study on heartbroken college students, some deep research into the neurobiology of trauma bonding, and even some translated behavioral frameworks from an international wiki page on toxic relationship dynamics.
The main goal is just to pull back the curtain on what's actually happening in your head.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start by validating what you, the listener, might be feeling if you're in the trenches of a breakup right now.
Yeah.
Why does it feel like your survival is on the line?
Because it is, biologically speaking.
Right. Because clinically speaking, your brain is experiencing severe drug withdrawal. I want to look at this 2010 fMRI study by Dr. Helen Fisher. She took 15 people, 10 women and 5 men who had recently been dumped but reported still being intensely, passionately in love with their exes.
Yeah, and she slid them into a brain scanner.
Exactly. Slid them into a scanner and showed them photos of the people who broke their hearts.
What's really fascinating here is that the brain just doesn't bother distinguishing between romantic love and a chemical substance. When these participants looked at photos of their exes, the areas of the brain that lit up on the scanner were the exact same areas associated with cocaine addiction and deep cravings.
That is wild.
It is. The study specifically highlighted the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens.
Okay, let's translate that for a second. For those of us who aren't neuroscientists, what are we actually looking at here?
Right, so think of a ventral tegmental area as your brain's primary engine for craving and motivation. It's basically a dopamine factory.
Okay.
In a happy relationship, your partner triggers that factory. It shoots dopamine over to the nucleus accumbens, which is the reward center, and you feel pleasure, motivation, intense anticipation. Your ex was, quite literally, your brain's favorite drug.
And then the breakup happens. The factory gets shut down overnight. You experience what the sources call the dopamine drop. But I mean, it's not just a lack of the good stuff, right? It's a total hostile takeover by the bad stuff.
Yeah, it is a massive systemic cascade of chemical chaos. First, oxytocin, the cuddle and trust hormone that facilitates deep bonding, it just vanishes.
Yes, gone.
Gone. And this creates a profound visceral sense of isolation. So to compensate for this sudden vulnerability, your brain panics and floods your system with cortisol, the primary stress hormone.
Which perfectly explains the physical symptoms. Cortisol reroutes blood flow away from your digestive tract and pumps it to your muscles because your body thinks a tiger is chasing you.
Yes.
That's why you have that awful heartbreak diet where you can't eat, you have terrible digestive issues, and you can't sleep.
And we really can't forget serotonin in this mix. Your serotonin levels plummet. Low serotonin is directly linked to intrusive, racing thoughts, dropping to levels that actually mimic obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Oh, well, which explains why you literally can't stop checking their social media. Your brain is acting like an addict, frantically searching the house for a fix. Like your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making part of your brain that knows looking at their Instagram will hurt you, it gets completely hijacked by the amygdala, your fear and panic center.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the brain operates on a strict use it or lose it rule regarding neural pathways.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, every single time you reach out to an ex or scour their social media for clues about their life, you are sending a jolt of electricity down that X equals reward pathway. You're keeping the connection alive.
So you're feeding the addiction.
You are. Breaking contact isn't just a piece of casual dating advice from a magazine. It is a biological necessity. You have to starve those specific pathways so the brain can prune them back and you can actually heal.
Hold on, I need to stop you there, because this brings up a huge paradox from our sources. If breakups are like drug withdrawal, you would think your brain would be thrilled to be rid of a toxic, stressful partner.
You would think so, yeah.
But often, the absolute worst, most abusive relationships are the hardest to walk away from. Why doesn't the brain just say, thank goodness that's over, and move on?
Because toxic relationships weaponize the brain's reward system through something called intermittent reinforcement. This was a concept pioneered by behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner.
Right, the pigeon guy.
The pigeon guy, exactly. Predictability is actually quite boring to the primitive brain. If you have a healthy partner who is consistently kind, your dopamine release is just a steady, calm trickle.
But a toxic partner operates like a slot machine in a casino.
Precisely. In a casino, you don't win every time you pull the lever. You lose, you lose, you lose, and then suddenly lights flash and coins pour out.
And that hooks you.
It does. That unpredictability spikes dopamine far higher than a guaranteed reward. In a toxic relationship, periods of coldness, neglect, or even abuse are suddenly interrupted by a dramatic apology, a grand romantic gesture, or intense affection.
So your brain gets hooked on the unpredictability.
Yes. You keep pulling the lever, enduring the abuse, desperate for that jackpot of their affection.
Wait, are we saying that fear and bad treatment actually make the brain love someone more? How does that make any evolutionary sense?
I know it doesn't make logical sense, but evolutionarily, dopamine's job isn't to make you feel happy. Its job is to flag things that are highly salient, meaning important for your survival.
Okay, go on.
When you experience fear, your body releases adrenaline and norepinephrine. You go into fight or flight. If you survive that intense, scary experience, even if the threat was your ex's unpredictable rage, your brain releases a massive wave of dopamine as a reward for surviving.
Oh, wow.
It mistakenly bonds you tighter to the source of the fear. You become a trauma-bonded adrenaline junkie.
And to cope with that maddening contradiction, the brain does gymnastics. The sources dig into cognitive dissonance, which is the intense psychological tension of holding two conflicting beliefs. You know this person is destroying you, but you also feel desperate for them.
It's agonizing.
It is. So to survive that tension, your brain just rewrites reality. You start minimizing the abuse, taking the blame for their bad behavior, romanticizing the good days, and manipulative exes know exactly how to exploit this.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, our translated wiki source from the Czech Republic outlines toxic relationship dynamics and specifically highlights something called flying monkeys.
Right, flying monkeys. Those are mutual friends or family members that a manipulative ex will use to bypass your boundaries. They feed you information about the ex or report back to them, keeping that chaotic drama loop spinning even after you've broken up.
Which brings us to the cure for this neurochemical car crash,
Yeah.
the no contact rule. But we really need to make a very clear distinction here. A lot of people hear no contact and think it's just a petty way to punish someone. Isn't ignoring someone just passive-aggressive manipulation?
It depends entirely on the intent and the execution. According to our clinical sources, no contact is a protective shield.
A shield.
Yeah, it's a healthy boundary set strictly for self-protection and healing, especially when escaping a narcissistic or manipulative partner. You are removing yourself from their game to regain your autonomy.
And the silent treatment.
The silent treatment, conversely, is a weapon. It is a punitive, passive-aggressive tactic used to manipulate, punish, and control another person. You give someone the silent treatment to force them to comply with a demand. No contact is about stepping off the battlefield entirely.
Okay, so you put up the shield, you block the number, you step off the battlefield. But the immediate aftermath of that is rarely peaceful. Things usually get highly chaotic.
Because you are triggering what behavioral psychology calls extinction. Extinction is what happens when a conditioned response is suddenly no longer reinforced. And it leads directly to an extinction burst.
The sources use this incredibly sad, fascinating example of a pigeon. If you train a pigeon to peck an electronic button to receive a pellet of birdseed, and then one day you turn the machine off, the pigeon doesn't just logically assess the situation, realize the machine is broken, and fly away.
No, it panics.
It panics. It pecks the button frantically, 10 times faster, over and over, desperately trying to force the machine to work before it finally gives up.
And that frantic pecking is followed by extinction-induced variability. When the usual method fails, the subject starts trying completely new, erratic tactics.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Forget the pigeon for a second. Think of a broken vending machine. You put your money in, you press the button for your favorite snack, and nothing drops. You don't just nod and calmly walk away.
Yoda does that.
Right. You press the button 5 more times. Then you shake the machine. Then you hit the glass. Maybe you even kick it. That is an extinction burst in human form. And it perfectly explained the bizarre, escalating behaviors you see when you first go no contact.
It explains the behavior on both sides. If your ex was used to controlling you and suddenly you don't reply, they might text. When that fails, they email. When that fails, they might show up at your workplace or deploy those flying monkeys to get a reaction. They are basically shaking the vending machine.
And we have to turn that mirror around, too. If you're listening to this and cringing because you showed up at your ex's apartment at 2 a.m. last year, or you called them 40 times from a blocked number, give yourself some grace. You weren't losing your mind. You were just a pigeon looking for a hit of dopamine in a broken machine. You were experiencing an extinction burst.
It is entirely biological. However, how long that burst lasts and how well you handle the silence is heavily dictated by your psychological blueprint, specifically your attachment style.
We have some fascinating data on this. There's a 2012 study by Mady and Gillick involving 78 university undergrads who'd recently gone through a breakup. They wanted to see how different attachment styles handle being cut off.
Right. The researchers found that individuals with a secure attachment style processed the dissolution of the relationship much healthier. They reported far less apprehension about running into their ex, their breakups were generally more amicable, and they maintained a healthy respect for the former partner without feeling a compulsive need to get back together.
So they grieved, but they didn't break.
Exactly.
But for the students with an insecure attachment style, the data painted a really chaotic picture. They experienced massive, debilitating distress. Their breakups were highly volatile, and they reported an overwhelming desire to get back together, while simultaneously harboring intense anger and blaming the ex for everything. It's a complete contradiction. Like, I hate you, but please don't leave me.
It is a contradiction, but the study uncovered the hidden driver behind it. The insecure attachment style itself doesn't directly cause the desire to get back together.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, the true driver is the sheer volume of distress they feel. Their nervous systems are so overloaded by the pain of separation that they desperately want to rekindle the relationship solely to soothe the pain, even if they know the relationship was terrible.
Let's break down those insecure styles because they react to no contact very differently.
Yeah.
If you have an anxious attachment style, going no contact feels like a literal physical threat to your core survival. Your nervous system screams at you to restore the connection at all costs.
Yeah.
Then you have the dismissive avoidance style. Avoidants are fascinating because they usually feel profound relief when no contact first starts. Intimacy feels suffocating to them, so distance feels like taking off a heavy backpack.
They feel relief initially, yes, but studies show that dismissive avoidants actually suffer the most severe long-term consequences.
Really? Why is that?
Well, their nervous system temporarily represses the pain of the attachment threat. They dive into work or new hobbies or rebound relationships. But eventually, those distractions fade. And because they lack the emotional coping skills to process grief in real time, the neurochemical debt eventually comes due often months later, hitting them like a freight train.
Wow. And then there's the fearful avoidant, who gets the worst of both worlds. An exhausting, paralyzing push-pull of terrified anxiety and suffocating avoidance.
This raises an important question regarding those avoidant exes. Because avoidants feel emotionally safe only when there is significant distance between them and a partner, your silence during no contact might actually make them feel safe enough to miss you and reach out.
Okay, but if you reply,
If you break your boundary and let them back in, the distance is instantly gone. The perceived threat of intimacy returns, and their nervous system will compel them to repeat the exact same cycle of pulling away that caused the breakup in the first place.
so what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means if you are sitting on your couch, agonizing over whether you made a terrible mistake by enforcing no contact, it might just be your anxious attachment system in overdrive. That overwhelming urge to text them is your distress talking, not your logic. It is not a sign that you made the wrong choice. It's just your brain fighting the withdrawal symptoms.
Right. Now, we've focused heavily on the person executing no contact in order to protect themselves and heal, but we promise to look at the other side.
Yes, the dumper.
What is happening in the brain of the person who actually initiated the breakup? We always assume the dumper is out living their best life, completely unbothered. Does the silence affect them?
This is where the psychology flips the script. According to a survey by Dating Tips Life mentioned in our sources, an astonishing 76.5% of male dumpers regret their decision within 60 days of the breakup.
That is a staggering majority. But, that regret is not automatic. It requires the specific psychological environment that no contact creates. If we map this out, the dumper generally goes through 5 distinct stages when faced with absolute silence.
Stage 1 is relief and validation. This usually covers day 1 to day 14. They've been dreading the breakup conversation for weeks, maybe months. Now the Band-Aid is ripped off, the burden is gone, and they feel a massive rush of freedom.
And if you beg, plead, or cry during this 2-week window, you do nothing but validate their decision that leaving was the right choice.
But if you remain completely silent, they enter stage 2. Curiosity begins. This happens roughly around days 14 to 21. They fully expected you to chase them. When you don't, the scarcity principle kicks in.
The scarcity principle is such a powerful human quirk.
It really is. The moment something is no longer freely available to us, our brain suddenly assigns it a higher value. You are no longer accessible to them, which instantly makes you more intriguing. They start wondering, wait, why aren't they reaching out? Have they already moved on?
Which bleeds directly into stage 3, doubt and second-guessing, generally hitting between days 21 and 35. This is where cognitive dissonance strikes the dumper.
Oh, right.
The high of their new freedom is wearing off. They have to start actively justifying their choice to leave because they are beginning to miss the comfort and routine you provided.
And then comes stage 4. The grass isn't greener realization. This usually hits between days 35 and 60. True dumpers' remorse sets in. They've had time to see what else is out there, they've been on a few awkward dates, and they realize the dating pool is highly underwhelming.
Yeah, the reality sets in.
This triggers loss aversion. That's the psychological principle. The humans feel the pain of losing something much more intensely than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. Because you are absent, their brain starts idealizing you. They remember the inside jokes and the good times without the friction of daily arguments.
Finally, we reach stage 5, reach out or acceptance, which is 60 days and beyond. At this point, the dumper will either swallow their pride and send a genuine message taking accountability, or, depending on their ego and circumstances, they will stubbornly accept the loss and force themselves to move on.
Right.
But it's crucial to understand that no contact is not a magic spell, and it's certainly not a manipulative game to win someone back. It simply creates the optimal, quiet psychological conditions for the dumper to reflect on their actions and experience the stark reality of your absence.
I want to ground this in reality for a second because we can't ignore the messy exceptions. You can't just ghost someone if you co-parent children, or if you run a business together, or if you're both on a lease. You can't just apply a strict 30-day radio silence when you have to figure out who is paying the electric bill.
That is a very real constraint, and our source from Alexis Friedlander addresses this beautifully with the concept of limited contact.
How does that work?
If you share inescapable adult responsibilities, you shift your communication to be strictly logistical. Some people call this the yellow rock method. You use neutral, polite, business-like language. You talk about the kids or the mortgage and absolutely nothing else. No emotional topics, no rehashing the past, no late-night phone calls. You are maintaining the emotional boundary of no contact while still functioning as an adult.
You're starving the emotional reward pathways while keeping the lights on. It's brilliant. Friedlander's source also shared a highly relatable success story, Natalie's 30-day experiment.
Oh, that's a great example.
Natalie had a highly anxious attachment style. She was constantly checking her ex's social media, analyzing his Spotify playlists, basically having daily breakdowns. She finally committed to 30 days of absolute, strict, no contact.
And it was hard at first, right?
It was so hard. The first 2 weeks were agonizing. Her brain was screaming for a fix. But by week 3, the anxious flare-up started to decrease. She reconnected with old friends. She started sleeping again. After 30 days, she had an epiphany. Her intrinsic self-worth didn't hinge on her ex's attention.
Natalie's story is a textbook example of neuroplasticity in action. By starving the old, painful neural circuits associated with her ex and actively building new neural pathways around healthy habits and self-care, she literally physically rewired her brain.
Incredible.
It proves that while no contact looks like a simple behavioral boundary on the outside, its true power is deeply neurobiological.
Treating your breakup like a clinical neurochemical readjustment doesn't magically erase the pain. It still hurts to lose someone you love. But looking at the science normalizes the pain. It tells you that you aren't crazy, you aren't weak, and you aren't broken. Your brain is just doing exactly what it evolved to do when a vital bond is severed. It provides a logical roadmap out of the dark.
And that leaves us with a rather profound question to consider. If the pain of heartbreak and withdrawal is so neurologically devastating, what if it's not a glitch, but an evolutionary feature?
What do you mean?
Well, what if the profound, earth-shattering agony of romantic withdrawal was designed by nature to force us to build wider, more resilient social networks and communities? Perhaps the pain is a biological warning, reminding us never to put the entire burden of our survival and all of our dopamine on the shoulders of just one single person.
Wow, that changes the entire perspective. It takes us right back to where we started. That invisible pain, the one the x-ray can't catch. It's not a sign of your destruction. It's a sign that your brain is incredibly powerful, and it is doing the hard, unseen work of healing and pushing you to grow. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Be patient with yourself, give yourself some grace as those neural pathways rewire, and we'll see you next time.